The City of Wichita is bringing back its water conservation rebate program, so we brought in our Strategic Services Manager from Public Works and Utilities, Ben Nelson, here to tell us more about it. Ben, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Loria.
I understand that there's some changes to this year's program.
Yeah, last year we had a rebate program that was offered the last half of the year, and it provided up to 5 rebates per single-family owner-occupied household for either rain barrels, smart irrigation controllers, dishwashers, washing machines, or toilets, all of which were high-efficient, water-efficient devices. This year we're expanding on that in 2 ways. The eligible customers are expanding, where last year it was just single-family owner-occupied households. Now anybody who gets a water bill, so it could be our largest industrial customers all the way down to multi-family property owners or businesses, or single-family homeowners, everybody will be eligible for up to 5 rebates this year. Even if they had rebates last year, everybody starts fresh with 5 eligible rebates. And we're offering the same rebates as we did last year, but there are 3 new devices that are going to be added to the list this time around.
What are those 3 new devices?
The 3 new devices in the rebate program this year are rain sensors for irrigation systems, high efficiency urinals, as well as dual flush conversion kits for toilets.
So if you participate in this program, then how much money do you get back?
Most of the items are eligible for a $100 rebate, with the exception of 2 of them, rain barrels and dual flush toilet conversion kits, and that's because they're generally a lower cost than the rest of those items. Rain barrels are eligible for up to a $75 rebate, dual flush converter kits are up to a $50 rebate, and that's dependent on the purchase price.
And so how do I go and claim my rebate? Right
now we're developing all the application materials and the lists of eligible items. Those are not available yet, but they should be in the next week or 2. All in advance of a July 1st launch date for this. So rebate applications and those eligible item lists should be available online at wichita.gov here in the coming weeks, and it will all be ready to go before July 1st. So once we have the application materials ready, somebody will simply just need to fill out the application, provide the appropriate documentation like an original sales receipt, submit that to our offices, and we can get it processed.
And then about how long does it take to get the money back?
Generally people will see it within 8 weeks. What happens is that we go through and we review to make sure all the documentation's in order. That usually doesn't take all that long, but the rebate's provided as a credit to the water bill. So depending on where people are at in the billing cycle, it could be a few weeks from when it gets approved to when they see it on their next bill.
Okay, so you just credit it back to their water bill?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And is there a rule about if I buy, a toilet that applies to this program, then does it have to be installed right away? Is there a rule about that?
The program does anticipate that people are installing these devices, and the documentation that'll be in the application materials will explain what we need. Usually for a lot of appliances or devices, installation's a part of the invoice that's on there, and if not, we just require some documentation to show that it's eventually been installed.
Okay. And then how are you guys funding this?
This year's program is funded with $450,000 that was remaining from last year's rebate program. Last summer we authorized a $1 million rebate program in 2013. There were funds still remaining in that, and we are repurposing those funds from last year to pay for this program. So there's no impact or new expenses, if you will, because we're using money that was unspent from last year.
And what were the results of last year's rebate program?
Last year's rebate program, we had more than 2,700 people participate, 2,700 customers who received rebates. There were 3,800 devices and items that were rebated last year. Toilets, high-efficiency toilets, and dishwashers and washing machines were the 3 highest rebated items. We also had more than 650 rain barrels that were rebated, so we had a pretty good participation rate, and ultimately this is all about conserving water. And what we found is that we had a conservation rate, the amount of water savings from this, that equals about 250,000 gallons per day over the course of a year. So that exceeds really the target that we need for water conservation. So it was a successful program in terms of getting the water savings that we were wanting out of it.
That's great. And will you give us just a general update about where we're at right now with the drought situation and our levels?
Yeah, we started off this year, I believe, with the driest spring on record. The past month or so has really put a really big dent in the the rain precipitation deficit that we've had. So the past few weeks have been very helpful in making sure that we have adequate water going into the summer irrigation months. This time last year, Cheney Lake, which is one of our 2 water supplies, had a dwindling level in terms of how much water was in the lake. That eventually got boosted back up with some really high rains in July and August last year. Right now, Cheney Lake is 100% full. There's actually a little bit of water that sits on top of our municipal supply that provides flood protection for those communities. So we actually have a little bit more than 100% full out at Cheney Lake. So right now our water sources are healthy. We're in really good shape right now. That being said, water conservation is an important part of our long-term water supply strategy. Last year it was much more emergency driven, where we were seeing these large deficits in how much water we had out at Cheney Lake. That's not the case this year. So last year was a little bit more of an emergency-based approach to conservation. This year and going forward, it really is important to conserve water. It's part of our strategy to make sure we have water for the next 50 years. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing this rebate program. So as always, we ask people to conserve when and where possible. It's just this year it's not as emergency-based as it was last year.
Not as dire.
Indeed.
Where can they go to get more conservation tips?
Yeah, there are 2 ways people can find out about how to conserve water. We have a website, savewichitawater.com. That was a website we started last year. We're still going to have information on there about how they can reduce their own usage. We also have a water conservation office with a dedicated phone line and staff who can talk through some of these issues with folks. So that number is always available and people are welcome and willing to call.
Well, thank you, Ben, for being here.
Thank you, Laura Gail.
And thank you for watching this City 7 News Now update. We encourage you to apply for the Water Conservation Rebate Program.